Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video. Today's content will be a little bit different. I'm going to try to get caught up on some of my hashtag askeck questions. And for those of you who don't know, you can leave a comment down below with the hashtag askeck. And if it has a question, I might answer it at some point in the future. So the way I'm going to structure this video is I'll try to spend a lot of time on the main question that I've included in the title. And then at the end, I'll also try to knock out a few more. So let's get started. And the first question, the one we'll be talking about the most, comes from Whiskey Dosen. He said, why did the New Republic continue to build ISDs when the Nebula and Republic classes were better and in the Republic's case cheaper? So in Star Wars Legends, as Whiskey is alluding to, the New Republic used not only Imperial class Star Destroyers, both Imperials 1 and 2, but also designed a whole range of new Star Destroyers, including the Republic and the Nebula, but also Star Destroyer analogs like the MC-90. That being said, this Star Destroyer, based on the Star Wars Legends works we get in the post-Endor period and beyond, was one of, if not the most common large capital ships within the New Republic's navy. So why did they continue to build ISDs? And in fact, we even saw more advanced Imperial class Star Destroyers with ships like the Anakin Solo and the Mon Mothma, which were Imperial Star Destroyers with various permutations, including hidden gravity well generators, better weapons, and more. Well, to answer that, I'm not sure the New Republic did build those ships. In Star Wars Legends, we get a lot of various factions stealing assets from the Empire as it's crumbling. In the courtship of Princess Leia, for example, 12 of the poorer Hapen worlds are described as bringing Star Destroyers as gifts to the New Republic. And the New Republic even used captured Imperial Star Destroyers early on in high-profile roles. The Rebel Dream, for example, was formerly the Tyrant. It was captured by the New Republic and made the flagship of Princess Leia. As far as I'm aware, although we do get lots of use of the Imperial classes, there's no actual mention of the New Republic producing more ships, whereas the Empire, for example, is explicitly mentioned on several occasions to be making new ISDs. I mentioned earlier that we do have some next-generation Imperial Star Destroyers, and I'm talking about the Anakin Solo, the Mon Mothma, the Elagos Akla, and others, but their creation was always a bit ambiguous to me. When it comes to the Elagos Akla and the Mon Mothma, they were produced during the Yuuzhan Vong War. They were meant to look like ordinary Imperial Star Destroyers, and I think they probably started off their life as ordinary Imperial Star Destroyers, but that's not said for certain. They're meant to be filled with experimental advanced technology, including gravity wells without the distinctive generator bulbs of an interdictor Star Destroyer. So either they were refitted ships or they were meant to look like Imperial Star Destroyers as a way to trick the Yuuzhan Vong. When it comes to the Anakin Solo, which was even more advanced and created during the Second Galactic Civil War era, that ship is described in Legacy of the Force Tempest as being a brand new Imperial-class Star Destroyer, although again, it's possible that brand new there refers to the fact that it's been re-outfitted so heavily that it's pretty much a new ship. Either way, even if the Anakin Solo was newly created by the Galactic Alliance, it doesn't seem to me like producing Imperial-class Star Destroyers was something that occurred on a frequent basis. As for the why, well, there are reasons. The Imperial-class Star Destroyer is more massive than the Republic, the Nebula, and honestly most ships fielded by the New Republic or the Galactic Alliance. So assuming you're using the technology which informed those later ships and giving new Imperial-class Star Destroyers better shields and weapons, they could be better brawlers than pretty much anything else you're producing. Like if the Galactic Alliance is making new Imperial Star Destroyers 20 years after the Battle of Endor, they're not going to use the same original designs. They'll have better internal technology, better shielding, better hull plating, etc. Sometimes you need a big, blunt hammer, and that's where an ISD fits perfectly, plus you have the fact that the ships are so common that a lot of the galaxy already would have been trained on how to operate ISD 1s, 2s, or the sort of ISD 3 type ships we discussed earlier. I do also really like the New Republic's thinking during the Yuuzhan Vong War that two ISDs from the outside will look very similar, so if you can hide special surprises like integrated interdiction capabilities, then you've got an advantage in battle. But let's move on now and cover some other hashtag askeck questions. Alright, so the next question comes from VorName, who says, askeck, when talking about ship power, we often concentrate on the amount of turbo lasers, but isn't the actual power output of the reactor the more important part? The vendor, for example, has very few guns, but if it fires all its power to them, and the episode 3 cross section says it can do that, wouldn't those batteries just get much stronger? Well, first of all, don't take the episode 3 cross section for gospel. The cross sections are notoriously ridiculous when it comes to Star Wars stats and figures, giving ships the range in light minutes, ridiculous power capacity, etc. For me, the way I've always thought about it is, yes, theoretically, you can channel all of the energy of a reactor through one gun, but the gun itself needs to have that capacity. So when talking about, say, an Imperial Star Destroyer, you've got those big barbette turbo lasers on either side of the superstructure. They can probably handle and output a lot more power than, say, the ISD-1's double turbo lasers. So ultimately, you're going to be limited by the amount of output that the guns can handle, and in most cases, we don't see ships in Star Wars having one or two very large weapons. It does happen sometimes, but I assume generally that the amount of lasers and weapons and the heaviness of the weapons is somewhat tied to the amount of output generally. This next question comes from Dragon Boy, who says, could a Force user use the Force on the inside of someone's body? Like, could they squish their brains from the inside? And there's no reason why not. I think in the Darth Bane trilogy, we see some of that maybe. I can't remember exactly if it's that or maybe Plagueis, where we do see Force users crushing hearts and other body parts. I mean, it would be difficult, but I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't do that. Thanks for the interesting question. The next question comes from MLG Joe, and it's an interesting one. I'm not sure if I've covered this in a video before, but it might be interesting too in the future, sort of expand on my thoughts here. But the Alliance's military doctrine generally involved being very, very mobile. They were always on the move. They didn't stick at a base too long. They could pack up and leave, as we saw at the Battle of Hoth in an instant if they needed to. Ditto with Yavin. And droid armies typically require a lot in the way of infrastructure. I mean, to make the army, you've got to set up a base, and those aren't usually very easy to move. Now, that's not always the case, but I also don't think ground troopers were the limiting factor for the Alliance. Like, there's no way they could have produced a battle droid army big enough to counter the Empire in a traditional warfare setting, because it's just not possible. The Empire was too big. And then they run into the other big issues they have. Resources being a major one, getting raw material and energy, but also the starfighters to protect their transport ships, the transport ships themselves, pretty much everything else associated with running a war. Jeremy asks, what's the most bonkers lightsaber build you read about or saw in Star Wars media? Could be weird crystals, odd blade configurations, strange hilt materials, or any of the above. That's kind of funny because I actually remember being a kid and reading about some of the non-standard lightsaber colors, i.e. the ones I hadn't seen in the movies up until that point. And I remember Lobaka's bronze lightsaber in Young Jedi Knights being really weird to me because it wasn't blue, green, maybe yellow or red. Now, of course, colors like that seem a lot more common and a lot less weird. I still think, for my money, one of the coolest, maybe not the weirdest, but one of the coolest lightsaber variants would be Lumaya's Light Whip. It's basically like a bunch of very little lightsabers put together, and it operates just like a whip and is very deadly, hard to counter. Luke has a special small lightsaber called a Shoto, which he uses to counter the lightsaber whip. It's pretty cool because we first see that in the Marvel comics, and then, of course, it's brought back for a Legacy of the Force. All right, the next question and the final one for today comes from Hunter, who says, not sure if you're doing these, but it just occurred to me that we've never seen a Twilek or Togruta with a severed Lekku. My question is along the lines that, since you would presume this to be fairly common, and knowing that a Lekku is a sensory organ, could they survive the trauma from losing one? And I can't think of any we see on screen with severed Lekku, but we definitely see some in the novels. One good example that I can think of would be Alima Rar. She loses her Lekku in a fight with Leia, and alongside having kind of like phantom limb pain, which would be a thing if you lost your arm, she also has some other sensory issues as well that are described in Legacy of the Force and the Dark Nest trilogy. Right now I'm also reading the Young Jedi Knight series, and I'm on the Diversity Alliance arc, and Nola Tarcona, who is the lead of the Diversity Alliance, is also missing one of her Lekku. A single Lekku, by the way, is called a Lek. I just call it a Lekku because I'm simple like that. But guys, I think that's all I've got the time for today. I hope you enjoyed me returning to the Ask Eck session and covering these 4 or 5 questions. Now, if it's been a while and you've been frustrated because I haven't answered one of your questions, or if you've got something you'd like to know, make sure you leave it down in the comments with the hashtag AskEck. I'm going to try to include some of these segments and shorter videos that I want to do. I've got one coming up about the Infinity Gates, which should be interesting. So again, include everything you want to know down below. Until next time, guys, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.